to Real People, Real Life.
The Jewish population makes up 0.02% of the population in the world, and 20% of the billionaires are Jewish. And it has nothing to do with oligarch or being criminals or whatever. It's because in the Jewish culture, people work hard, they study hard. You think about what the Jewish population has brought to society. Look at your cell phone. Look at, do you use Waze? Do it just goes on and on and on. A lot of things that have happened in medicine. Well,
there's a reason why discipline, religion, family values result in success and excellence. You see it in the Asian community as well. Once all that falls apart, and any government, their number one thing, any controlling government and or dictatorship or some of these terrible governments that have been through history, first thing to do is break apart the family, break apart the church or the religion. When you break apart the foundational disciplines, it's really disciplines. It's things that people have learned to work hard at. But anyways, you ready?
Yeah. I agree. I think that it's that, but also, it's also culture and how you're raised and how you grew up. And everybody thinks, oh, all the Jews are rich. Well, first of all, that's not true. It's very
just like everyone thinks anyone who owns a business is rich.
Right. Which is not true.
It's not
They're
true.
the ones who take the risk. But, the one thing in most Jewish families, I can't speak for all of them because I don't know all of them. Education is very important, right? And so you work hard so that hopefully the next generation can do better. And so you spend what you have to spend in order for your children to get great education so that they can better themselves and pass it along.
Right.
And I think that says a lot.
Well, putting your family first, putting your children first. You grew up, basically, you grew up in a Jewish family. You grew up in South Carolina, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think you corrected me because I'm like, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of Jews in South Carolina. And you think, actually, it used to be heavily populated.
Yeah, Charleston used to have the largest Jewish population in the country. And that goes back a long, long time.
Yeah, it's an early settlement.
Right.
Right.
That's exactly right.
And then they moved to New York.
It's not that they necessarily moved to New York, but because of, going through Ellis Island, all the people that came over, especially, pre-World War II and during the Holocaust when people were escaping Europe, they all come into New York, so they settled in New York.
Right.
And my great-grandfather on my dad's side, he was they all came over from Poland back. It was in the early 1900s. It was before any of the wars. And my grandfather came over. He was like one. And my great-grandfather was a very religious Orthodox Jew. And when any of the rabbis would come down from New York to visit, they always stayed with my grandfather because he had a kosher house and he was very religious. I never knew him. I just know the stories of him, whatever. And the thing is that so there's always been a really good Jewish population here in Charleston. Currently we have 4 synagogues. We have a Chabad.
What's a Chabad?
A Chabad. So that's pretty much I guess for lack of a better word, of an organization that they're pretty much all over the world. They're run by the Hasidic Jews, and it's somewhat like a synagogue, but it's like a welcoming place for people to congregate. Some of them have services. Some
They're almost a community center.
Like a community center, but a lot of them do have services. Like I've been, when I travel over to India, I've been to the Chabad there. It's a one-room place that you go because it's obviously a very tiny community. It's more for not necessarily, for the few local Jews that live in India, but it's mostly for people that are traveling, whatever, to go in and if they want to eat kosher or they want to have services because there's always a rabbi there or whatever. And essentially because they don't take dues, it's only donations, and that's how they survive, and they do extremely well. And then we also in Charleston have the temple here, which is the oldest standing oldest reform movement in the Jewish community. But I can't remember what year it opened, but it goes back hundreds of years. It was the oldest in the United States. And Charleston was a big community for freedom of religion. So there's so many different religions here in Charleston, and the Jews came here too for freedom of religion and not being, keep out of the persecution from wherever they were living outside of the U.S.
Yeah, my family, Italian, came through Ellis Island, same kind of concept, Mussolini and all that.
And they ended up in California. As well.
My dad was the renegade and reestablished in California, where I've spent most of my life. But it's interesting because I grew up in a Christian household. I was lucky enough, however, to have a grandfather who was a profound student of the Bible. There's kind of a thing. It's like, oh yeah, I'm a Christian, or I'm this religion, but they've actually never read the book and studied the book, and they really don't. Basically, somebody at a pulpit or at a synagogue or here or there, wherever they tell you what to think. Well, my grandfather was very much like, I want to know what the heck's going on here. And his Bible, when he died, he gave it to me, and it's a torn rag. There's not a page that doesn't have notes, questions. He would question everything, and he had a really profound relationship with God. But one of the things that I found interesting growing up, because I would study with him every Tuesday, especially when I became a teenager, is his profound respect for the Jewish community, because it was the foundation for our religion. And, and of course we have the Old Testament, New Testament. Your Old Testament is the Torah, right? Same books though.
Correct.
Yeah. And it's interesting because even in the New Testament, Jesus doesn't besmirch the Jews at all. He actually says he came first for the Jews, then the Gentiles, and it goes into a whole bunch of things. And I'm no expert, but I can say I've studied it from book to book, end to end. I've asked tons of questions, still have a million more. But what's weird is I never had in my life growing up this didn't even know what it meant. It's like I just saw Jews kind of like Christians. I didn't know anything about it. We're all part of the same big group. We all believe in the God of Abraham. What I've seen that's somewhat disturbing, though, is this rise. There's a palatable rise in anti-Semitism and anti-Christianity, too. Just the whole Judeo-Christian thing. And, of course, out front, especially with what's going on today, the anti-Semitism, that's scary. You raised children as a Jewish person, and have you noticed a rise in your life recently of anti-Semitism, or is it just something that the news is pushing out there?
I know there's definitely a large rise in anti-Semitism in the U.S., and if you see the percentages of hate crimes in the last few years, it's never been this high in this country. And, obviously, I think there's a lot of reasons for that. But, obviously, with the war and, with Israel and Gaza, the whole world is looking at that, and it's been magnifying. And because of all the protesting and everything, it gets worse and worse. And then everybody's looking for somebody to blame. So, who better to blame than the Jews? That's the way it's been for thousands and thousands of years, right?
It's weird. That's one thing I don't understand, and why that is. You have such a small. is it 0.2% of the world's population?
0.02%
of the world's population, and there has been jokes, hatred, all under these guise of anti-Semitism, lies, stereotypes. Yeah. We all have stereotypes.
Yeah. It's funny. As time goes on, what's acceptable and what's not acceptable, that kind of changes.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you, growing up in Charleston, I never experienced anti-Semitism. I had friends that, they made comments, "Hey, Jew boy," stuff like that. But it was more in being funny or whatever. It wasn't like I took it as, he's anti-Semitic, because it was very, close friends or whatever.
We busted balls.
Yeah, exactly. You just played around. Looking back at it, should I have said, "Hey, I don't really think you should be speaking to me that way." It wasn't that type of situation. I will tell you though, like with my, when my dad was growing up, and he would tell me, kind of in his adult life stuff too, that there was places in Charleston that did not invite Jews. Jews weren't allowed to go in there. There were clubs or things like that. So there was kind of like underneath. There's anti-Semitism. but for the most part, Charleston is not an anti-Semitic city. We've been very fortunate. There hasn't been protests and things at the schools here and on the streets. There've been, at the beginning there was a few protests, but really nothing.
You have
crazy.
A long history here.
Yeah. And then, so, there, like I said, there's always going to be some, but I would say that, in Charleston, we're very fortunate. But I travel a good bit for work. So, when I go to different places, I see what goes on and obviously the big Jewish centers, there's going to be more, protests, whether it's in New York or California or whatever. But for the most part, like, my oldest daughter went to private school where she did experience a little bit of anti-Semitism. People make comments or things like that. But I really feel like a lot of times people learn that stuff from whether it's their parents or from their friends who learn something. I mean, none of us are born hating or prejudiced against somebody. We learn that from someone. And I think that what happens is that people say things not even thinking or realizing what they're saying, whether it hurts somebody or what the true meaning is behind it.
Or they don't. I think the biggest issue is that I call it the wholesale opinion market. It's very easy just to agree with a crowd and not actually do your own research and understand the truth. Or if the truth is muddled, actually find out what the truth is to you. Right. Utah kids aren't racist. They're not anti-Semitic because they're clean slates and they get taught these things. Then you have media influences, power influences, societal influences, and it becomes convoluted pretty damn quickly. And I wonder for you, let's go back. So, you have two daughters and they experience anti-Semitism. You grew up in Charleston, didn't, really experience anything really terrible. Very similar where I grew, my neighborhood. I mean, we had a black friend. I was the Italian friend. We had, the British friend. He wasn't from Britain, it's England. We're all Americans, but we all busted each other's balls about, okay, here comes the WAP, and, hey, hello, Mr. Ted, how you doing? Did you have your tea today? And, but we're all friends and we just go, it was fun. But it's funny because we didn't know what any of that stuff was. We just played. We had a great time.
Yeah. And a lot of times I think that stuff comes out in the heat of the moment, like if, people get in an argument or a fight or whatever, and then they start spewing hatred and saying things that they shouldn't say, and not even really think about, again, like I said, think about what they're saying. And I do think that the percentage of anti-Semitism is not as it's out of control. But I also think that the percentage of people don't have a hatred for Jews. I think it's, we have a lot of reasons why we hear so much about it.
It's a political pawn, for sure.
It's, the press is on top of that when it happens. And so you hear more about that than, the peaceful things of where, hey, we're, in the community, we're working together. Like my synagogue, for example, works with Mother Emanuel, where they had that guy come in there and shoot up the church and kill people. And, we're, the two synagogues are very, very close, and they work together. And if there's ever, if they ever pick up on something that's going wrong, they're sharing the information. And so that happens throughout the community. And I think that that's, a good point that, that can calm things down and keep things from getting out of control at certain times. But, for the most part, I do feel like, most people are good people and aren't anti-Semitic. It's just like, are you
I don't think most people aren't racist.
Right. I was going to say, you're prejudiced against black people. Well, do you even know why? If you are, why are you? I mean, it makes no sense. It's like, listen,
I judge people. It's funny because if you were to take a look at what Martin Luther King said today, it is judge a person by their character. I'm obviously paraphrasing, but every single thing you hear from the mouthpieces out there saying how embarrassed he would be, it's like, well, that's not what he was doing. That's not what he was doing. He's like, actually start judging people for merit. Start judging people for who they are, the way they treat you. Mm-hmm. People don't take the time to do that.
Yeah, I mean, you think about, here's a perfect example. So one of my very close friends lives in India. He's a Muslim. And another very good friend of mine who also lives in India, he's Christian. And another very good friend of mine that lives in India is Hindu. And I'm a Jew. So all four of us are sitting at a table at dinner having a great time. Now, if we can get along and have a great time at a table having dinner, why can't the rest of the world, governments and all that stuff, act like that instead of everybody just trying to beat up on each other? And, you know,
it's called self-interest. It's
power
self-interest
grab,
and power
greed,
and greed,
all those
corruption.
different things.
And they get that through pitting people against each other. You know, the race industry, the anti-Semitic industry. You can actually call it, I mean, there's it's industries. There's power behind these movements. And as they see them slipping away, you know, divide and conquer is really what it comes down to. And it's, I don't believe that that's where, I believe that more people today are less racist, less anti-Semitic, except for we right now with the anti-Semitism thing, we have this it's not even a skirmish. I mean, I'll come out and say it. It was a terror attack against Israel. And the way it's been reported, you know, is it true what they're saying? You get all these different stories. And then we want watchers, we want people tuning in, and they start playing the race game, the anti-Semitic game. And it's frustrating because, you know, we've seen this in college campuses. And what I've seen watching this is, you know, colleges should be a place of open discussion. It actually, I mean, these are young minds, and it should be a place where you're able to sit down and discuss different views. And it's become basically a place of intolerance. But the education isn't there, whether it's coming from the universities or within social groups. You have people protesting about all sorts of things, whether it's the wars, this Israel-Gaza thing, whatever pops up on the news media that's controversial, and they get right on the microphone and have no clue what they're talking about. Right. You know, and we have luckily this new independent media who actually gets out there, puts themselves on the line, and says, okay, well, you know, from the river to the sea, you know, well, what river, what sea, you know, and
nobody knows what that means.
And they don't. And the problem is that they have been emotionally aroused to spout talking points. Where they're coming from, I don't know. I do know that there are universities that are being investigated. Funding is potentially being pulled. I come from California. They're investigating Berkeley. They're investigating UCLA at the federal level to see what they have done to keep some of this anti-Semitism and other things out. You keep it in control. You know, hey, let's have a discussion, not let's fight and hate and do all of this. And who's propagating it? That's the real question: is who's propagating it? And what I've seen from some of my views on these college campuses is that, you know, I tend to be more conservative, and the conservative view for the last 20 years is just not allowed. I mean, they don't even let these people come and talk on campus, and they should invite and say, let's have a discussion. You're starting to see more of it as the independent media, like Charlie Kirk gets out there and has these great discussions. And I've seen Ben Shapiro, who can just kill it on a stage. And they're letting them in. But Ben Shapiro and them, they've been kicked off college campuses because we don't agree with you.
Listen, there's nothing wrong with a good debate.
Of course, that's what our country is based
civil,
on.
I think it's fine. And you know, one thing you know that you brought up is, you know, it's knowledge, and I don't think that people really, like I was saying earlier, understand when they say certain things or act a certain way how it affects other people. And you know, getting back to one of my daughters, you know, because she experienced some of that in middle and high school, you know, she did a speech in front of the whole school about anti-Semitism, and really brought to light of, you know, things that are hurtful, what things actually mean. And so it's like educating these kids to say, hey, this is what hate is. This is how it grows and how it gets out of control. So even if it just educates one person, I think that's a lot. The other thing she did is she brought in, and again, this was, you know, my daughter's in law school now, but this was back when she was in high school, and she brought in a Holocaust survivor who spoke. And I was there, and to watch these kids just like mesmerized by just listening to this guy is like, you know, I was tortured, and I was in a concentration camp, and this is I survived it. Let me just tell you what went on. And people are like, oh, wow, I didn't realize, I hear about this Holocaust, but I don't know what it is because they don't really teach it so much. It's kind of, whatever it is in school, they brush over it a little bit, talk a little bit about it, really understanding about it. And so I think it's an understanding. And it's just, and I don't think that you should just be educated about the Jewish religion and anti-Semitism. You should understand what goes on with other religions and other races and stuff. Of what people experience and what they go through, and I think if people have a better understanding, they're more accepting and not necessarily spewing out things they shouldn't say.
Well, it's any relationship, Eric. Right? If you meet a person you don't know, if you eventually befriend them. I've known you for 30-some years now. When I met you, I thought you were you were very, very business. You were revered in what you did. You were very young, and you were very successful in the department you were. And there was a reputation. You walked in, and that's Eric, man. That guy's, he's one of our best merchandisers. And men, you were in men's suits at the time, working with Nordstrom when I was over there. But as I got to know you, you have to listen. You learn. You become friends. You have to do the same thing with people you disagree with. You might not become friends, but you're going to learn something. And if you can take just a little bit away, I say on the podcast, and it's so true, that the only difference between you today and you in 5 years is what you learn and the people you meet. If you don't learn anything else in the next 5 years and you meet nobody else, you're going to be the same person you were. You haven't grown. The brain gets bored. They call it the hedonic treadmill. And you need to stimulate the brain. You need to challenge yourself to learn new things. You can't just sit on a rocking chair and retire. You'll be dead in a year. You have to continue to live and challenge yourself. And the best way to do that is go again, learn things that you don't know or you think are a certain way. I challenge people out there that, like people that profess Christianity. Oh, so yeah, let's discuss. Let's talk about it. Because it's not black and white. There's a lot of interpretations. That's why there's so many different denominations. And there's kind of denominations within the Jewish religion too. Different, I don't know if we would call it denominations, but like Hasidic and Orthodox, non-Orthodox.
Different levels of religiousness, I guess you could say.
Belief systems. But the problem I find in my community, my religion, is they don't even know what's in the book. They've got some talking points. We call them C&E Christians. They go to church on Christmas and Easter. God created the heavens and the earth. That's about all they know of the Old Testament. And then they know some key verses in the New Testament. If they read the whole thing, they would be blown away. I tell everybody who claims to be a Christian, just read Genesis. Just read it. It's the most craziest science fiction you'll ever read in your life. What it talks about, it's insane about creation and the Noah story, and it gets the Nephilim that were on the earth, and all of these. And people debate, and it's great because you can debate what the meanings of these things are, but people just don't know. They don't know what they actually profess to believe.
I think everybody's different, and everybody has their own beliefs or whatever. Myself and my family, I wouldn't say we're definitely not religious when we go to synagogue for the high holidays or for special occasions. I would say we're secular Jews. So we participate and we celebrate all the holidays, and we celebrate all the customs. And really, my feeling about being Jewish is that you have the customs and you have the traditions and all that, and then you have family, and those all kind of go together. So, for example, like in my house, every Friday night we celebrate. Bringing in of Shabbat, and we've done that since my wife and I have been married, and we've done it with our kids, and it's just one of those things that we do. But it's really, to me, it's more about, like I said, the family, the customs, and being together, and just understanding one another, and also I think it's very important that we're accepting of other people too. And
no, look, you hang out with me,
right? Exactly.
That's about as accepting as you can get on this planet.
But one thing that I want to say is that so we have known each other for 30 years, and we worked together in California, and we moved across this big
That's a
country
great story,
and to New Jersey, and then we kind of went our separate ways, whatever. But we're here, and I appreciate you coming to sunny Charleston, South Carolina.
That was difficult.
Yeah, it's actually a beautiful day today.
Yeah.
Of course, you live in San Diego, so it's always nice there. But I appreciate you coming out, and there's obviously lots to talk about, and then there's lots to see in our city. So,
well, I'm excited. We're going to spend a little time, and I do want to go back to something you said, because actually I want to touch on this, because this is something that I think people need to get a better understanding of, and I want to understand it better. Okay, and that's the term Judaism via Jew. And you brought up secular Jew, which if you think about Judaism as a religion, then those are diametrically opposed words. Secular, religion. I mean, and so what I don't quite understand is it considered an ethnicity or a religion? I know there's, Asian Jews, Black Jews. I know the religion part of it. But historically, in the Torah, there was the Israelite. Well, it was actually, the Israelites. But before they went to Israel, it was Abraham who organized. It was Abraham that organized. Moses took them away from Egypt, but he kind of organized it. He's the one that got the 10 Commandments, kind of started the whole, hey, this is what you got to do to live a clean life. Am I right on that? Or is this a conversation with Steve tomorrow?
I think it's probably more of a conversation with somebody that's a professional in this area. I mean, I can tell you just from my perspective is that Judaism is a religion, it's a culture, it's a people. And to me, that's what it is. It's not a race, I don't think. I think of a race as, are you white, you're black, you're Chinese, you're Indian, whatever it is. And within the Jewish religion, just like any religion, like you said, we have Asians, we have Black people, we have Indians, it's everybody. The lost tribe of Israel, So it's let's put it this way, because in Judaism can be complicated. So you have the really religious Hasidic Jews in Israel who would probably look at me and go, "You're not Jewish," and that's okay. That's they're very ultra orthodox by the book. This is what it says, so we're gonna the Torah says to do it like this, so that's what we're doing, and we take it literally. Whereas I would say probably more like modern day Jews don't necessarily read it that way. But again, it's every between the Reformed, Conservative, Orthodox, Hasidic Jews, there's all types of religious beliefs or whatever.
I look at it kind of like the Italians, right? Now, the Italians from Italy, it's a race, obviously. But they tend to be Catholic, a lot of Catholics, a lot of, obviously the Christian heritage there. You got the Vatican, which isn't Italy, it's its own town, but its own city, but obviously it's in the middle of Italy. And but it's a culture, right? Like, we go to church on Sundays. We have a big Italian meal on Sunday with the whole family comes over. There's all this tradition. There's strong family values. I believe 100% it comes from a deep, an early belief in something with discipline. For us, it was the Christian church. For my grandfather, the Catholic church. For my wife, the Catholic church. But what's interesting, when you look at it, we had a foundation. We had what we believed were absolutes in our own lives. Behave this way, treat people this way, don't do this, don't do that. And none of it was extreme. I mean, honestly, pretty much the 10 Commandments, pretty common sense stuff. And I look at my son, successful double engineer. I'm bragging. I didn't do anything, but he did all the work, but I'll still take some credit. I look at my 3 stepkids, all college graduates. One flies for American Airlines. One is a teacher. Another is a master's in counseling for children. All well behaved. Nobody's busted by the law. But they also had rules, and they had strong family. and they had a place to go when the world was tough on them. And we were there to support them. We were also there to correct them. We were also there to listen. We also didn't demand. One of the things that I always did with my son Eric is I demanded that he question and then do the research, but I never told him how to think. And what I think is lost is the ability to critical think. There's just too much dogma out there. I said earlier, the wholesale opinion market. People don't want to be ostracized. So if they happen to just fall into a group of people, hey, oh yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, sure, why not? Oh yeah, that's it. Well, I heard that. Yeah, I'm sure that. Yeah, that's true. Oh, did you hear this? And it's like a rumor mill, but people would rather just agree and get the heck out of there than actually challenge, because challenging requires you to think. And it also will take your circle of friends and drop them down. You'll start to realize who your real friends are, the ones that can actually listen to you.
Yeah, it's true, and it'll be interesting to me. I think social media has completely changed the whole world, and I don't know, is it for good? Is it for bad? I mean, I think for the younger generation, it hasn't been great. I think they spend more time worrying about, someone's giving them a heart or a thumbs up, or filming TikToks or whatever. And that consumes so much of their time and so much of their brain power versus like when we were kids growing up, we'd go outside and we'd leave in the morning. And when the street lights came on, we knew it was time to come home for dinner, right?
That was it.
And, we rode around our bikes and, we made forts and, you hung out with all the kids in your neighborhood and, you created,
true social networks,
right? But you created friendships, but you also you learn how to use your imagination and create things. And today it'll be interesting to see down the road, 50 years from now, what people are like. Where's social media 50 years from now? How are people interacting? I think there's good and there's bad. My personal feeling is that I think that because there's so much information out there now and so much wrong information out there now, but people look at social media as, well, that's what I read, that's what's true, whatever. And I do think that it's affected our ability to think on our own and to have our own opinions, and because we spend so much time worrying about what other people think. And I'm not saying that people didn't act like that before, but now it's like it's nonstop. You got that phone in your hand, and you're constantly, what do people think? What are the clicks and just on and on and on. And I sometimes think, do the kids even know how to use a telephone anymore? Do they even know what that is? I don't even think that, when they have their iPhones or whatever they have, they're not even using the phone part of it. It's always, texting.
Well, when texting was first invented, the cell phone companies left. They're like, they got a phone. Nobody is going to actually sit there with the keyboard and text when they just call. I mean, that was the amazing invention, a phone in your pocket. Yeah. And they made fun of the BlackBerry or this or that. Like, nobody's going to use that. Right. Turns out that more texts go out than phone calls, I believe. I don't know. I would believe it. It's just easy. So
I do think that has a lot to do with I think it has a lot to do with some of the problems that we have in the country and the world today. And, what kind of true critical thinking can you get from people that are just constantly on their phones? And I do think there's 50 years from now when there's study on all this,
there's studies now.
Yeah, they're going to see that there's problems. And there won't be, you won't be able to see what those long-term problems are till 50 years from now or whatever. But I just hope that at some point people are going to realize, hey, you know what, let's talk face to face. Let's have a conversation. Let's not hide behind text. I mean, I can tell you, especially having girls, there's always drama with girls and their roommates or their friends or whatever. And it's text. I'm like, you know what? Get from behind the text, because you're going to say stuff on a text you wouldn't say to someone's face.
That's right.
So forget all that
and
stuff.
You lose a lot of the unspoken words. I do some remote podcasts. They're not as good if I can sit in front of a person, because there's a lot being said that isn't being said. And you're able to understand what the words might mean better. Text is very difficult. Emojis, okay, whatever. But one of the positives, though, is that for years and years, pretty much for all of my growing up and your parents, grandparents, the information was one directional. Came from the news, came from the newspapers, came from the church, came from the synagogue. One of the positives that I see and why I started this is that it opens up discourse. It's not one way. So people can comment. They can challenge things that I say. There's a way to give immediate feedback. There's a way, and some of the platforms out there now have these community sections where the discourse can happen. So it's not one way information anymore. There's enough people and enough experts out there that can easily challenge, the lies or the hatred or this and that. But it doesn't need to be censored by our government. And we'll get into that another time. Let's talk about business, because one of the things that made us friends was a commonality in working hard and business. So when I met you, I had a vending machine business, and I always had little businesses. You come from a family of businesses. We met at Nordstrom. You were a merchandiser for the men's suits department, I believe.
Buyer.
You were a buyer. Okay. Oh, you weren't a merchandiser yet. You weren't that good. No, I'm kidding. And we mentioned this on a really popular podcast where the two areas, if you wanted to make money, was men's shoes, or if you knew, or in suits, but the learning curve for suits was significantly more difficult than shoes. But anyways, we met, then you became the store manager. I ended up working with you. And then you said you went to New Jersey and dragged me out there, and we had a blast. Absolute great time. We worked hard, but we had a lot of good fun until you quit and left me hanging in New Jersey. It was sad.
You survived.
But you quit because, you come from a family on both sides in the clothing business. Retail, and when I met you, you were on the retail side of things, but a third generation manufacturing company.
Correct.
That's on the wall there, Pearl Manufacturing. And you left and you went to the retail side of things with your dad at Max's Men's Store, a classic men's store here in Charleston, South Carolina. Does it still exist? Did it sell?
No, my father retired.
Okay.
Closed the business. And
how long was he in Max's Men's Store? And I believe I have a picture. So if I have it, I'm going to put it up on the...
So Max's, when he closed it, the store, it was a little over 70 years old.
Wow.
So my grandfather had started in 1933. And it had a very good run.
Mm-hmm.
And, I was there for a bit. But then I had the opportunity to go into the supplier side, manufacturing side. And that's what I did. I'll kind of give you my work history if you
absolutely.
Yeah. So, as a kid, my parents were divorced and remarried. And so growing up, my dad had a men's specialty store, which was Max's Men's Store. Max was my grandfather. And, I would help out in there, around the holidays and sometimes during the summer or whatever. And it was good. It was interesting, whatever. But again, it was never, I don't like four walls. I like to be on the move and doing things all the time. So I did, but I did work there. But then I also, when my mom got remarried, she married Herbert Berlinski, who was president of Burrow Manufacturing, which at the time was a pant manufacturer. And so I would work in the distribution center during the summer, and during my breaks from school, I would work in the distribution center, and it wasn't air conditioned, so we pretty much would start at 6 in the morning and end at 3. And so I spent a lot of time learning about the business just by being in the warehouse and packing pants, shipping them out and all that, but learning what hard work is. And we growing up as kids, it wasn't like here's a big huge allowance or something. If we got an allowance, it wasn't a whole lot. So if we wanted to buy things or go places or whatever, we had to work. So, not only did I do that, but then I, during the summer, I would, in the morning until 3 o'clock, I would pack pants. In the afternoon, I'd go, after 3, I'd go home, take a shower. At 5 o'clock, I'd go and I was a security guard. And so I was a security guard all night. And then I would do then the next day I'd start over and do the same thing. And then on the weekends I had a car waxing business, and I would wax people's cars, wash and wax and all that. So I was always busy. Again, I wanted to earn money so I could do things that I wanted to do.
You're taught a work ethic.
But yeah, it was a work ethic, and that came from the generations before me, that you got to work hard, and when you work hard, there's rewards, and those rewards which in this case was that not only was I earning money, which is obviously a nice reward, but it was also learning what's involved in hard work, and then also, is this what you want to do, or do you want to work harder and go into something bigger and more opportunities? So so what I started to do is I would go on the road with Herbert during my breaks, and we go and visit retailers, and and he would sell them the line for the next season or whatever, and I would carry his bags and pack his bags and all that stuff. But I learned a lot along the way, because I learned how to talk to people, and I learned about relationships, and it wasn't just about going to see the customer and learning how to talk to the customer, which was the retailer, but it was also learning how to talk to the person at the front desk at the hotel. Hey, you know what? If you talk nice to somebody, maybe you get an upgrade, right? so you learn how to get an upgrade, and then you learn how to treat people and how to talk to people, and by treating somebody nice, you're going to get a lot more from somebody if you treat them nice and yelling at them all the time. And so then you get a taste, then all of a sudden you're like, oh, we're staying in a nicer room, so you get a taste of that, and then you kind of have your expectation of what you like. So,
but all from a foundation of hard work, packing the pants, doing the security, watching, learning, mentors.
Yeah. And I will tell you, and then my dad, on the other hand, he worked very hard in the specialty store. When you own a specialty store, it's pretty much 6 days a week. They're closed on Sundays. And I mean, when you own that store, I mean, you have employees, but bottom line is you're on that floor every day selling. You're there making sure that these relationships are being built. You're there making sure there's the right inventory in the store, and you're making sure that, the customers are taken care of, because the bottom line is, at the end of the day, it's the owner that it all falls on. And he did it for a long, long time and had a very successful business. And I learned a lot from him with hard work and what was important and again, taking care of your family and making sure they're educated and all that stuff, so that there's a future down the road. So those are the different types of things that I did right through college. And then when I graduated college, I decided, let me go out and get some experience. And I went to work for Nordstrom, and I started in Tyson's Corner back in 1989.
Washington, D.C., right?
Yeah, Washington, D.C., which was their first store on the East Coast. And, and I worked my way up in the company from, selling on the floor. I helped them open their second store on the East Coast and became a department manager in men's clothing. And then I went to the West Coast as a buyer, and then a store manager, and then came back to the East Coast as store manager. And I was very fortunate because I grew very fast. I got promoted very fast. And, but I learned along the way, especially starting on the floor at selling, it's relationships. And hey, got to establish a relationship. You also got to know how to sell. And in order to sell, you got to have product knowledge. You got to understand how things fit. You got to understand fabrications. And I feel like back then, you really had to be a true salesman. You had to understand what you're selling. And I think in today's world, it's not about that anymore. It's just about, it doesn't matter what you're selling. Let's just sell it. And so
so much stuff is moved without actually selling it. Very little merchandising going on.
And so, from there, so anyway, so I spent my time at Nordstrom. I was only there for 7 years, but I had like a full career in 7 years. I went from a salesperson to a buyer, a store manager. I traveled. I was involved in product development. It was a lot of great opportunities with Nordstrom. So from there, I left. I came back to Charleston. I worked at my dad's store for about 6 years, and then and learned a lot and enjoyed doing it. And again, like I said, I mean, the opportunity came up to come into Burl, and it wasn't that I didn't love that business. It was just that because I am the type of person that, again, it's difficult for me to be in four walls all the time. I like to be moving and getting out and traveling and seeing customers and all that. So when that opportunity came, I jumped on it, and let's see. So that was 24 years ago, and a long time ago. And so we're fortunate that we've sustained the business for that long, and we've evolved our business.
And most definitely had to evolve, whether it be forced or out of creativity. But the retail market, I mean, has completely changed from when I was on the retail side of it at Nordstrom. I was on the expense side. I was on the maintenance side, but kept the building running, look pretty. But
can't sell goods if your building's not running right. So
no,
really
and
important.
Yeah, and they had an image and everything, but the thought process of, stores, Nordstrom stores closing left and right, the whole retail market being flipped up on side its head. No, it's almost nobody saw it coming. People call it the Amazon effect, the internet. There's a million other reasons, but you got to think fast on your feet. That market changed super fast. There were industry disruptors coming at the retail market left and right. And if you weren't moving fast, thinking fast, you're having to change all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And as far as where there's Amazon or all these all the retailers today have websites.
Mm-hmm.
All suppliers have websites. So every mom and pop has a website or whatever, because there's a lot of business that's done on the web. So the people that are survived are the people that have been able to pivot and change their business and follow the course and make things happen. And we're kind of talking about Nordstrom here, but Nordstrom's done a great job. They have their brick and mortars, and they have their outlets, and then they have their online business, which is tremendous business.
Mm-hmm. They got in on that early in the game, I believe. Yeah. Early.
But it's interesting is that the online business, it's a good business, it's an important part of the business, but again, just like social media, you're losing that contact with people. There is no contact with people anymore. When you're shopping online, customers can't touch and feel merchandise. They can't try stuff on, even if they bring it. They order it, they bring it home, they try it on. They don't really know how it's supposed to fit. And so they're not having that experience. And I think about some of the things that I learned, and I was fortunate. When I was at Nordstrom, that I was a decent salesperson. I was in their Pace Setters Club. So, one thing that I learned, and I learned it from an older gentleman that worked on the clothing floor at Tyson's Corner when I first started there. And he said, if you sell a customer exactly what they want, you haven't sold them anything. So, for example, if a customer came in and wanted to buy a Navy suit, you showed him everything on the rack but a Navy suit, because he's going to buy the Navy suit. So do your job, be a salesman, and sell something else. And so that's how, that's the mentality about, growing your business, learning from other people. But then I also spent the time where I would go to other departments and train and teach people, how do you, they want to know, how do you sell? Why do you sell so much? How do you sell? Teaching them about selling. But I was always a believer in all you need to know is one more thing than the consumer. So if a consumer comes in and they like, oh, well, I know this fits and that. But if you have that knowledge in your head that you understand everything and you're able to share that with the customer. So, oh yeah, well, I understand, this suit fits this way, blah, blah. I said, yeah, but did you know that this fabric is blah, blah, blah? Or did you know that this handwork goes into the garment? Or do you know that by spending an extra $300, you're going to have something that's going to last you 10 more years? You got to look at, and again, we're talking about clothing, but, it's an investment. So, today you've got a world of disposable clothing. Fast fashion, as people talk about all the time. And it's like, you go to some of these stores that, stuff is so inexpensive. You go in there, you wear it season, you throw it out, And, unfortunately that's, it's what I call the Walmarting of America. It's all about a race to the bottom. And it's too bad because you kind of lost, kind of get into the whole political thing here, but, you've lost manufacturing in this country because we can't be cheap enough. And people want stuff cheaper and cheaper. They don't care what it is. They don't care how it affects. And, if you want to kind of look at, like in my business, we had a factory. We don't have a factory anymore. We haven't had a factory in a long time. Couldn't compete. Mm-hmm. And so, we had to go elsewhere, overseas in order to make that happen. But again, what's happened is I think it's so important, whatever job you have, to be knowledgeable, to understand what you're doing, and to spend the time learning. And I feel like if you and you hear this a lot on the news and different stories about it, like the generations of, someone would go work for GE, they'd spend their whole career there, right? And they get the gold watch, and that's great.
Gold-plated watch.
Very loyal, and that's how the world worked then. Now today, I feel like this younger generation will come in, and 1-2 years they're looking to go elsewhere. So there's loyalty is one thing, but another thing is if you jump from one company to the next and you're not there that long, what are you learning? Is it and it becomes more about the paycheck than it does it becomes about looking at what long term, what kind of effect that has on you. And And what, if you look, hey, maybe if I do stay with this company for a lot longer, it's going to benefit me so much more down the line versus, hey, this job's offering me $5,000 more a year. I'm going to jump and go to that job or whatever. And, again, hard work is again, it was ingrained in me or whatever. Maybe it's in my blood, and I like to be busy. The Yiddish word is spilkies. I got to be moving and doing stuff all the time. And, if I'm not at work, I'm at home, I'm in the yard, or I'm fixing something or whatever. It's not like, I'm not a big relaxer type person or whatever.
You need to learn to relax a little bit more.
Maybe. But, I do think that, again, I'm not bashing the new generation coming up, but I do think that, we're losing something with understanding that instead of working hard and understanding that you work hard and then the rewards are coming and they'll come to you, instead of today, I feel like they want everything now. In other words, there's nothing to look forward to because they want it all now.
Yeah.
And maybe they don't want to work 5 days a week, or they only want to work at home. And, I just feel like, working at home, I understand, for certain situations, maybe you have kids at home or whatever and you need help with that, but not working in your office around other people and communicating and learning and bouncing ideas off of other people, you lose all of that. So where's the creativity? Where's the, all that? I mean, we have an office in India, got 60 people that work in that office, and they're constantly, designers and tailors and fabric people, and they're constantly talking and bouncing ideas off of people, and
creativity.
It's just busy and so much. I feel like so much activity is going on that so much more is getting done.
Yeah, they used to call it culture. It's all of those intangibles. It's like what I said earlier. The new people you meet, and the new things you learn. Well, you kind of learn a lot of new things from the new people you meet, and so that environment, I think, is critical to business. In my business, there's no way it would ever work from home. Well, we just not going to happen. There's a culture. There's we have an open office environment. People can talk to each other. If there's a problem happening over there, you already know about it. And so we can jump in and we can take care of things. This doesn't, it's like texting your business the whole time. If you're working from home. I mean, there are rare situations, but they're seeing the statistics and the data. Productivity was way down. If everybody could work from home, then everyone would have their own business because they'd all be self-starters.
Right. I mean, you think about, being the owner of a business and what it takes to do that. You have all the stresses and the headaches of owning a business. And again, like you were saying earlier, everybody thinks if you have a business, you're wealthy. Well, that's not the case.
No.
You're wealthy with worries. Who's going to, right? Who's going to pay the bills? Who's going to handle these back orders? Payroll. Who's going to deal with the customer that's not happy? Who's going to deal with a whole shipment that came in and it's completely wrong, or the whole shipment smells because it got mildew in the container on the way over? It just who's going to deal with the computer when the whole computer system shuts down? Those type of things, and that's just side stuff that's going on. You still got to run your business, right? And I do think that you can learn so much in your business by listening to your people. Listen to what they're telling you, because they're out there with the ultimate customer, and the customer's telling them something. Mm-hmm. We don't like your fit. We don't like your fabrics. Hey, we need, you could take retailers talking to their buyers or whatever, saying, hey, listen, we need a sport coat at this price, and this is the type of fabrics we need. Or, you know what? We need these sizes. Customer sees coming in. We don't have these sizes. Or whatever. And listening to what people are saying, just like, in your business. Your guys are saying, hey, listen, we need to keep thermostats on the truck because we're missing tons of business. And every customer we go into is like, well, can you replace my thermostat? Or your thermostat's broken, we got to go order it. Well, think about if you're not listening to your guys and you don't put them on the trucks, you're not doing a service to your customer. Mm-hmm. And I think that's important. And I also think that if you're listening to your employees and you listen to your customer, that your business will be that much better. And I also think that you're going to get respect from your employees, because they're like, hey, this guy's in my corner. He wants me to earn money. He wants to help, build my business so that I can be successful and take care of my family.
They become part of the solution rather than I'm just here to get my paycheck. They don't care about me. Get them involved in the solutions. Get them to be owners in the
Right.
business. Take ownership in your department. Have clear. One of the things we try to do: very clear roles and responsibilities, very clear expectations, very clear roadmaps to success. We want people to look and say, okay, here's a roadmap to success from your beginning all the way to management. One of the things I don't reward is hiring somebody and, I've been here for a year. I want a raise. Well, we'll do a cost of living adjustment here and there, but you're doing the same thing you did a year ago. Okay, why should I give you more money? And this is what I taught my son. This is what I was taught by my dad, is that work equals rewards. And that was, whether it was money, whether it was more privileges, whether it was, being treated better because you did a good hard day's worth of work. But the work had to go first.
Right. And, one thing that I do believe in is, giving ownership to your employees. And like, for example, like our customer service, lots of times they'll call me and say, well, what should I do dealing with this customer? I'm like, well, what do you think we should do? Or, you don't need to call me to make a decision to take care of a customer. If you think we need to take something back, or you think we need to give them a discount to make them happy because of mistakes maybe that we made, or maybe a customer made a mistake or whatever, do your best to make them happy. You're not going to always make everybody happy. And, and a lot of times maybe your decision isn't what the customer wants to hear, but do what you think is the right thing. And take ownership. I'm not telling you have to come to me with every little thing. I don't want to micromanage you. That's the last thing I want to do.
You got to train people to start thinking like you. Delegation, people misunderstand that. They think it's, I'm just going to have you do what I don't want to do. It's actually training somebody, and it takes a long time to actually start thinking and doing and being able to make decisions on processes that the business is founded on or that made the business successful. And if they understand those things, then you can relieve the customer service, because now they know, okay, in these situations, this is exactly what Eric would do, or my manager would do, and this is why the business is successful. So I feel confident that I can actually make that decision. And then they feel great.
Yeah. And, and I also, one of the best things I've ever heard is what Steve Jobs said. He goes, I hire people that are smarter than me. Mm-hmm. And you know what? That's the way you should do it. You should always hire people that can bring something to the table that you can't offer. So that way, you're learning, but you're also, because of that, you can build your business and you can do better. You can scale, and you can't do it all. This is the all-star quarterback type business where they're really good at what they do. They start a business, and that business owns them the rest of their life. They still work for a company. Sure. Because if they don't show up, they don't get a paycheck. The business goes out of business. They had to be the smartest person in the room. They had to do all the work themselves. They weren't able to delegate. They weren't able to scale. And that's one of the big myths of entrepreneurialism. And so many people get caught in that. Something I was caught in. I worked hard to try to get out of that and scale. But it's difficult. And it requires systems, hiring people smarter than you, and being able to understand leadership and what it really means, and delegate and things like that. Yeah, I think that's well said, well put. And again, it's just about what's the right way to run your organization, what works best for you, and what works best for for your customer. And even though we all have different types of business, we're all kind of doing the same thing. I tell my group, I've said it a million times on the podcast, but when we have our meetings every week, I said, people, we are in the relationship management business. That's all we do. It happens that we do it through heating and air conditioning, but never do I have an air conditioner hand me a check. Right. It's the people and the trust that you build with your customers. It's owning your mistakes. It's having pride and believing in your business first, and the rewards come. Do the work first, and the money will follow, the respect and the rewards. And you find that the money tends to be the least of those rewards. It's important to run a business and make money, but building something that could potentially last like Burl, 3 generations,
That's exciting. That's something you should be proud of and being part of and carrying that torch.
Yeah, I think that's good. And speaking of third generations, my partner recently retired, and so I have a new partner, which is a company called Ballin out of Canada. And it's interesting because Burl is short for Berlinski, and we were founded in 1946. And Ballin is short for Berlinski, and they were founded in 1946. And they were also a trouser company.
Wow.
So it was kind of a match made in heaven, and it was nice to kind of have that smooth transition to work with another company that pretty much does a lot of the same things we do, and it's been really, really good for our business.
And a lot in common, I would think, going through the manufacturing business from 1946?
1946, yeah.
To 2025, going on 26. It's a long time, and having a similar path makes a good partnership.
Yes.
And we talked about mergers and acquisitions on another podcast, and that's a difficult thing to make happen.
Sure.
Taking two companies and remarrying them and making it smooth. Well, Eric, we've had a pretty good conversation, kind of covered a lot of topics, but it's been fun to come down here. I'm excited to check out the town and have some great dinner tonight. And thank you for your time, man.
I appreciate you coming and spending a little time with me, and I always enjoy talking to you.
Yeah, it was a good conversation. We'll have another one for sure.
I'll be there.
All right. Talk to you later.
You've been listening to Real People, Real Life. Our passion is to have real conversations with real people who've made it. Real people who've made it, who did it on their own terms. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, catch us on Twitter or X at RPRL Podcast and on YouTube at Real People, Real Life Podcast.